What is going on, busy bariatrics? I am so excited to bring you into this episode where we are going to mix a little bit of science, a little bit of my sass, as well as a whole lot of strategy to help you go from overwhelmed post-op to unstoppable powerhouse. Today's episode, we are going to be talking about why you didn't sign up for summer camp. And no, this isn't supposed to be a shame or guilt skip episode, but I want to talk about why so many people in the bariatric community pause, hesitate, or don't take action when they know they need to. I think a lot of the times people see change as a scary thing, and this is going to go over both why your brain feels that it is scary, but also why people just don't sign up when an amazing opportunity comes. And I think summer camp was a pretty awesome opportunity to sign up. And a couple of the reasons why I think that is we sold out of spots even before the projection. To give you an idea, this episode is going to drop at the end of May. We technically count promotion as from May 1st on, and by about mid-May, we were kind of done. Let me go over some of the behind the scenes of what goes into summer camp, as well as where we just are and where we're going to go in the future. We actually start summer camp at the end of the previous summer camp. We talk to our counselors, we do exit surveys with our clients, we receive feedback from my assistant Stacy of what worked, what didn't work, and then we start to say, like, how can we make this better? Do we add more giveaways? Which things really engaged the campers? Which things kind of hit as duds? How do we rotate speakers so it's not the same list every year? And then we start to craft out who do we want for next year's list. And we'll actually start that around November. Traditionally, whenever we get done bariatric retreat is when we kind of sit and say, like, okay, what are we going to do for next year's summer camp? And then I will start to personally reach out to either guest speakers that I know, people I built relationships, people I've heard on podcasts or tours around December. And then by mid-January, we have our list of our 14 speakers that we want to use. And we have to then start what I call the cat parade. This is where Stacy and I will go through and check, like, did everyone give an actionable item for our journal that we give out to campers? Do we have headshots? Do we have bios? And that takes a process to get that for 14 people, as well as booking what specific date will they be comfortable with? Can they make it? What are their materials going to look like? And to coordinate everything into our journal, which is why we actually keep our journal private just to our clients, because it is an amazing opportunity to reflect, build the materials that our graphic designer, Michelle, puts into detail, and all the resources into one place really are amazing. And it comes out really awesomely. This year we had JBY kind of smack dab in the middle of it. So April, as we're in the middle of getting everything together, we hosted our biggest live workout event ever at JBY, which was awesome. It was a great opportunity for our assistant coach, Lisa. That was our first live workout that she had ever done, and she led part of it, which was amazing. I helped in support, which was cool. And we have all that in another podcast episode. But for this one, mid-April is when we really start to steam up. I go on my podcast whirlwind tour. Last year, I think I appeared on 8 podcasts. This year, there was 6 that I was able to get on. 2 surprisingly, just didn't get back to me. So always interesting to see how that works. But you have to remember, with all other podcasts, a lot of the times they have their own schedules and their promotions and their own materials to go. And that was pretty much from mid-March to end of April, we had that. We also did more of a rolling enrollment, where before I would just take on clients on the 15th and 30th, but pretty much it was, if you heard about it and you applied, you could absolutely start as soon as the check cleared, as we say, and then we would get you your stuff. But then we really go full court press in our promotional work, into our email blitzes, into sprinkling our own podcasts into here around May. And it was kind of funny because Michelle, our graphic designer, is like, you're not really asking for much promotional for summer camp. And I'm like, well, we're already at 46 clients, so I don't know how much more promotional we need to do. And then we signed our last 4 spots, which was really cool. So we sold out a lot quicker than we did last year. Last year's goal was to get to 50 and we got to 44, and that was really impressive because we started at 13. This year, because we gradually enrolled more clients, we kind of did it gentlier. And that was so that our counselors could get to know people more individually. The hive didn't get like bum rushed on the 15th and 30th. And we saw that like there were so many more days where we would get a new bee in and the whole community would like warm and embrace, and newbies that came in ahead of time would be like, oh my goodness, there's someone newer than me. And it kind of caused everyone to kind of vibe a little bit better. We also saw that over the last 2 years since we've ran summer camp, the last 2 years, we really were the only game in town. Most coaches, especially in the online space, not just in the bariatric community, but in fitness and nutrition as a whole, usually have summer as their lighter schedule. Clients are tougher to have, people are on vacations, and it's usually a period where people take off. Because I'm a teacher, I always choose, like, let me make that our ramp up time. And in the last 2 years, no one really promoted summer programs. This year alone, just by like kind of opening up Instagram and looking around, I counted 4 different major summer programs, whether they be group coaching options, summer camp sales, other coaches offering into the experience or space or running challenges. And it was really cool to see because I think each one of those camps or programs offered something a little differently than what we did. And we still had our best year, which is why when I hear coaches or people say like, oh, aren't you afraid this is going to drive other people to competition? I really don't believe that or think that it's even true. I really think by like there being multiple products in the market, it allows everyone to find exactly what works for them and how it feels. And I can't say that the data shows otherwise. I think Coke is a better product because Pepsi exists and that challenges them to offer more and make it better and more affordable. And I think we did the same as well with our stuff. So we actually brought in more clients this year than we have in previous years' summer camps, and we are at capacity. If you're wondering like why I set the limit at 50, I am very intentional. At every level, you do get a piece of me. So if you signed up for one-to-one coaching, you get bi-weekly with me. If you're in our remote coaching, I'm still checking your data and feedback and making sure that you are thriving week over week. And then even in our Hive package, you can still message me. Well, we did a little bit of numbers of Kylie because she was pregnant as we started our campaign. We realized her due date was going to be smack dab in the middle of signing clients. So we realized like the bulk was going to be to me because our assistant coach, Lisa, can't really take that many clients because she took on Kylie's workload, which means that like I'm doing the bulk of the heavy lifting, which is kind of cool. If you signed up, it means you're getting a lot more me. But it also meant that I had to be very intentional of how many clients could I take, how many could we afford, and how many could we do that. Usually I can take at most like 40 clients. 44, I start to feel like my head rattles a bit. And 50 is definitely a new challenge for me, especially with getting the podcast off the ground, making sure the team is working well, coordinating all of our interviews with our speakers. We've also gotten our YouTube page up and down. So a lot of really cool stuff that went on with that, but we wanted to be intentional. So when Kylie comes back, she'll have her clients. Lisa will then be able to take her own client load, and then I will gently be working clients into other parts of our program, because that's kind of how we build it. Is you can stay within the Hive for as long as you want, but you don't necessarily need to stay like right with me at 1-to-1 the entire time. Anyway, that's how we got to 50. The other cheap part of me, if you know anything, I am very budget driven in my decision making. And if I went above 50 clients, I have to pay more for my coaching software. When I told the team, like, here's how I figured out the limits, they were like, Rob, you would shamelessly take clients and just not sleep and handle it. And they're not necessarily wrong with that. But I decided I would protect my peace and my schedule and say, look, here's how I'm working it. Tuesdays and Wednesdays are going to be all my 1-to-1 calls. Thursday is going to be for our remote clients. And then Friday to Monday can be kind of like building out the rest of it. And how I started to defend that decision was, okay, 50 is the cap number for this. We will absolutely expand when we get Kylie and Lisa fully in. But I also wanted to make sure that like our coaches had time. Like Kylie's on maternity leave. She's also working with me as a client. So I want to make sure she comes back healthy and fit. And I think that's a sign of just like decent coaching for anyone, is making sure that you're not burning out your team members or burning yourself out as a client. So it's looking at what can you realistically hold on your list. How many people can you serve with others? Are you serving yourself? And that's kind of how we manage with everything to see how it is going. So 50 was our number, and that is where we're at. Before I get into the science and the behavior as to why you don't change, if you could do me a favor, I want to cover some housekeeping because all of our data shows nobody listens to the end of these episodes. So I'm just going to put this smack dab right here. If you could please leave a rating or review, or at least share this episode to your stories, it would really be a huge help to me. And the reason why is the podcast really only grows by other people sharing it. I don't go viral. It really is word of mouth. And for me to actually operate between the software, my time, the labor that goes in the back end of editing and uploading, we did the math and it costs about $150 per episode to leave it ad-free, which is kind of what we do. So if you can just share the episode, that would be good. If you could share one of our sponsors, I guess that technically makes it paid, but they don't give me money directly to make the episode. But if you could just, use one of our sponsors because they kick back a little bit of money and I put that to offset, and that covers everything. The other promotion I will say is 150 is like a very interesting number. And the reason why I think it is so interesting is that for $150, that is what the average American spends on fast casual and dining out. That is also the amount that our lowest tiered offer of coaching is, where you get workouts, nutrition, and the ability to message me. And that's $150. So when I hear people say they can't afford it, I'm going to go into why I don't necessarily believe that and how you can change that. And that's really what we do here in Busy Bariatrics, is we talk about how can we help you change and develop everything. So back to the show and why people don't change and how it shows up when we go through. Like I said, we had about 70 applications and 50 people signed, which was awesome. But then I kind of go through the back end part of the work. And this is where like people don't understand online coaching is a lot of work. But I went through and I said like, well, why did these people not sign up? And the number one reason that people didn't sign up, they didn't tell me. They outright ghosted, because when a client says I'm going to pass or I don't hear from them, I always say like, look, I totally get that if this isn't the program for you, could you just let me know why? And that could be money, that could be effort, that could be this isn't the support level I'm looking at. And I never necessarily care why they don't sign up. It gives me really good feedback. So when someone ghosts, this can be for a coaching program. There are people who sign up and then never do anything, as well as people who might sign up for bariatric surgery, or they have bariatric surgery and then they never attend a support group. Ghosting does not mean that you are a bad person. What actually happens is, for many people, they realize that this level of commitment actually asks them to show up, and that actually scares them more than it scares me. When people are confronted with showing up and having to do work, we either go into fight or flight response. And so if you are in fight response, you say, okay, now I have work to do. I am absolutely going to dig in. I'm going to start taking the modules. I'm going to do my form assessments. I'm going to start lifting weights and tracking my nutrition. And that's the fight mechanism. For some, though, they go into straight flight and realize like, oh my goodness, now there's really no excuse as to why I can't get my bariatric lifestyle in place. And that's something that like even at our high package or one-to-one, we work on a lot of eliminating the excuses or the barriers to change and working on it. But some people realize like, oh no, this got rid of all the barriers I had. And now the only thing keeping me from having success is me. And that's a hard pass for some people. So they will actually run and go. And that is because it's actually easier to disappear than to say that I'm not ready to take responsibility for my health yet. That seems to be a recurring package of when I talk to clients and they ghost, it's, look, the time's kind of right. The money isn't an issue, but this means like I'm going to have someone shine a light of I'm not willing to make change, and this is not what they want. The other reason that they may ghost is they look at the application, they sign up, and then we actually send emails right after you apply. Here's exactly what we're going to expect from you. This is the amount of work it's going to take. This is what it's going to do, and this is how we can get you to whatever package can help you stay in maintenance and thrive into maintenance. The problem is once they realize that this is going to require work and this is exactly what they're going to have to handle, both mentally and physically, they say, hell nah, and I am not doing that. And there is a lot of science and psychology as to why people ghost for this. The first being cognitive dissonance. When people are presented with something that conflicts with their current self-image, meaning that like I'm trying but nothing works, and then they realize this might work too well, they're going to bail to protect their identity. I even see this with some clients where they say like, I don't know why I'm bucking the system. And it's like, well, if you did this, it'll probably work so well that you won't have excuses around your physique, your lifestyle, or your habits, patterns, and behaviors. And then it will go from there. And because people are rooted deeply into their identity, they're not willing to change that. For me, a lot of it was like, I am a drinker and I am a foodie and I like to go out a lot. And when I realized those were the reasons I were holding myself back and I started to reduce and if not eliminate drinking, I realized that got me a totally different level of change. And it took a couple coaches to say like, you drink too much or you don't do enough tracking on the weekends. Then when it came from being a foodie, the idea of like, I have to make healthy meals or that I have to hold myself accountable on the weekend, that got me another level of work. And a lot of the times people will actually go to great lengths to not do the work they know that will get them the results. This is why people spend so much money on supplements or they hire coaches to buck the rest of their system. It's that they're trying to protect the identity of who they are, and they don't necessarily want to change where they are in their process. The second reason why people ghost is from a process called avoidance coping. And avoidance coping is essentially the idea that ghosting is a defense mechanism. So the more that they avoid the situation or don't go into it, they realize that they don't have to feel the shame or the guilt of not doing the work of bariatric surgery. And that happens in every aspect of life. Think of if you have constant credit card bills coming in, and this is where it came to me, I just wouldn't pay them because opening the envelope was a level of shame of I'm not doing the work and that I am spending more than I am making. And that was a problem. Also, people avoid being rejected by their tribe leaders. This, from an anthropological standpoint, is why we have clients that hang out at the hive level or who follow me on Instagram or who follow in different parts of my ecosystem. And the biggest fear that they have is if they work one-to-one with me, they realize they're going to have to make change or else there might be a little bit of friction between me and the client. And because of that, they almost opt themselves out of like, nope, not signing up for that level of work. If I work with Rob, it means that I'm going to get him bi-weekly. He's going to tell me exactly what I need to do. And then he's going to check back within a week to see where I am in the progress. And then we have to go eyeball to eyeball with it. That does not work for everyone. That is why people almost avoid being rejected by the tribe leaders and go through. You see this in different ways in groups. You have maybe at work those high achievers who will do everything to be like almost up the rear of their boss to be like, look what I'm doing. Here's more stuff I'm doing. Here's everything I am doing to be great. And then you have other people who are kind of like, look, I'm going to do my best to avoid my boss, do enough work that he doesn't come looking for me and handling everything else. Neither one of those people is better than the other, but it is a different operating expense. So for an example, some people like that high package where it's like, look, I don't necessarily want to be held eyeball to eyeball with Rob. And now they can kind of still get their workouts, their nutrition, they can learn at the pace they want. But then there isn't that high level of accountability of you need to do this every week. So if you ghost or if you are ghosting, a lot of the times it can be because you realize this is going to work too well. You might be having to admit that things are going on and you don't want to be rejected. So to handle each one of these, how we coach our clients is when we are afraid that something will work too well, is we have to work down the map of what will actually happen and what will actually change our lifestyle. And by doing that mapping process, it really helps our clients understand what they have to do. For an example, what I would say is if you are ghosting or you were afraid to show up for something, start with something as simple as like, what would happen if you signed up for that 5K? And this is like, even not with me because I don't do 5Ks. Okay, well, then I'd have to start training for a 5K. And then what would happen? Well, I'd either have to admit I don't really want to do a 5K or that I need to do the work. Well, if you admit you don't want to do a 5K, that's okay. But then it makes you also realize like you're not a runner. I think it took like me failing one or two. I'm going to sign up for this 5K, not do anything, and then not run the race to realize like I'm not built for that lifestyle. And that doesn't make me a bad person. It just makes me not a runner. And I think some people need to understand that like that's the same with your bariatric journey. You are not a bad person if you do not want to lift and track your food. It just means this isn't the program for you, or that is not a priority for you. When it comes to avoidance coping, it's one of those that we teach our clients like, okay, you avoided your check-in or you avoided doing the activity. What made you feel guilty or shameful about it? Well, I really don't like sharing what I'm eating. Okay, so let's take that off and not focus on that just yet. Do you still want to do the workouts? Yes. Okay, so let's not look at your nutrition for a couple weeks and let's just get you into the habit of working out. Sometimes just finding like the small tweaks and saying like, okay, like we don't have to do more, we have to take less out. And that comes from experiencing the shame or guilt of what's happening. The other part from the tribe leader, if people are like, look, I know I need this program, but I don't want to go full tilt all the way, hang out in the hive. And when you're ready, just tell me when one-to-one coaching comes in. It really does play a big part of it. The second aspect of why people said they did not sign up for coaching was they don't have the money. And I want to go back to that $150 a month that we talked about. Most people do have the money. And the reason why I say that is from someone who used to be 6 figures in credit card debt and into now like almost like having money to save and go on trips and like live a lifestyle. The biggest change and factor of that was just tracking our finances. Research and studies have shown that the average household that tracks their finances can find upwards of $950 a month that they are just bleeding out from things like fast casual, subscriptions, convenience, or other aspects. And there's nothing wrong with having convenience in your life, but if it's coming to the tune of close to $1,000 a month and it's keeping you from hitting your other goals, then maybe that's something to talk about. For an example, convenience for me is it takes about 2 to 3 hours for me to meal prep all my meals per week, which means that takes about 12 hours of my month to get everything done. If it's $150 an hour for me to kind of operate, which is what I found the expense to be, it makes more sense to use a meal prep service. So again, does not mean that like convenience is a bad thing, but you have to figure out where you're moving your money and getting everything together. When we looked at the research and data, the reason why I priced our lowest ticket offer at $150 is the average person, not household, just individual person, spends $150 on DoorDash or some sort of delivery or convenience in food price. And the reason why that's important is a lot of the times when people say, I don't have the money, the first thing I will ask is like, do you use DoorDash or Instacart? And sometimes they'll say like, yes, I do. I'm like, do you mind if I see the order? And they will look at the order and be like, oh my goodness, I'm spending $300 a month. I'm like, perfect. Cut that number in half, use $150 in DoorDash still, but put $150 towards your fitness and nutrition, and you'll probably lose weight. Because if you're anything like me, when you are ordering delivery, DoorDash, or even Instacart, you're not necessarily ordering vegetables late at night or hummus or a salad. It's usually pizza, burgers, fries, all that good stuff. So part of that is just finding the money that way. The other thing is people will find the money for programs when they believe it's worth it. So for the people who said, I don't have the money, it might not even be that you don't have the money. It's that you do not find anything else in your budget to be less important than handling your fitness and nutrition. And again, does not make you a bad person. It just means that that's where your values and priorities align. If you were sitting and saying, look, DoorDash is really important. I talked to someone who was spending $500 a month in DoorDash and said they couldn't afford the program. We got deep onto like, well, what purpose does DoorDash play for you? And they're like, well, I'm not really that social. I don't like going out and eating, but I like good food, so it does make me feel good. And I was like, do you think you get down to $350 a month in DoorDash? And they said they thought they could, but they needed to think about it. But obviously, the convenience of spending $500 a month on DoorDash was more important than their fitness and nutrition. And again, not calling out that person or throwing shade to it, but I think this happens a lot in our lifestyles for everything else. If someone told me I needed like to get my gut health checked, and I was like, well, I don't really have a gut health issue. That's part one. Do I want my gut health like checked? And the answer is like, well, no, he doesn't. So I don't find value in it because I don't have an issue or I'm doing fine without that. Two, it's not really a pressing problem or a bigger priority than anything else in my list. So no, I'm probably not going to spend $500 a month for a gut health specialist. But turn it around the exact opposite way. Say I really am having digestive issues, I can't eat properly, I'm not doing well, then yeah, if that's causing me to lose time with family and friends, struggling to eat foods, constantly in a binge restrict pattern, then maybe $500 a month is absolutely what I need to get my digestion done. If this problem is that big of a problem for me, it may mean I'll move my expenses around to adjust or reflect what I need. So again, it comes down to figuring out what your values are and how you need, because it's not really about the affordability of a program. It's just where are your values aligned. So for me, fast casual is not really important. It's almost a hindrance, which is also like going out and drinking. Like I went out 3 times this month already and spent close to $600 just on social drinking with friends, colleagues, family members. I'm like $800 to have alcohol that I can have at my house, which is another reason why I don't like going out. I didn't even like drink or swing from the chandeliers. I went out for one night with my friends and we grabbed drinks and I looked at the bill. I bought a round of drinks for all my friends and it came to close to $80. And I was like, for $80, I could have like restocked my entire bar and had you all in my backyard. And the bar was 2 blocks from there. So again, just goes on what we value and what's important for all of that. The reason why, from a science and psychology aspect, you need to understand that this happens is many people don't take action because of a perceived return on investment. So the idea is if they don't believe that they'll follow through, the value drops instantly. So if I tell you, look, I'm going to have you track your food every day and I'm going to expect you to walk 3 days a week and I'm going to expect you to get your steps in, you may say, I'm not going to do any of that at all. And automatically, it doesn't matter what price I pointed at. If you know you're not going to do the work, you're not going to sign up for it. You could put me in front of the best marathon coach ever. And if they're like, I'm going to have you run every day and I'm going to get you up to 32 miles or whatever a marathon length is, I would be like, I'm not doing any of that. So I'm certainly not going to pay this person, even if they're the best marathon runner ever. So if you know you're not going to follow through, you are not going to say it or say like, look, it's not in the budget for me. And again, a lot of people don't want to openly admit like, look, I'm not going to follow through on any of these programs. I've had business mentors pitch to me for all of this, and they're like, we want you to track your KPIs for like 5 weeks, like your key performance indicators. We want you to micromanage your coaches. We want you to track how many DMs you're going to send every week. And I'm like, I'm not going to do any of that. It's tedious. I don't like it. And I still don't think it's going to drive a result. I'm not going to sign up for that coach. Even though there might be value in it, if I know I'm not going to do it, I'm not going to part with my money for that. The other part that you have to realize is human beings are built to be like against loss aversion. And loss aversion is simply the idea of people do not want to part with their money, believe it or not, especially big globs of their money all at once. It's why more people do better with like the Netflix or the fast food option of they're willing to pay $19.99 like once a month and forget about it. And then when it dings for like $20 next month, you're kind of like, oh, it's only $20. And then next thing you know, it's like $240 a month, a year you spend on something you didn't really use. Well, if your number's like 350, 500, or even 150, you may feel that a little bit more. And if you don't want to part with that money, you're going to be like, look, I'd rather have the $150 than the results that this program can get you. And that's totally fine as well. For some people, it's like, look, I'd rather have the money. And that's not a problem. But that is some of the psychology as to why that happens. The final part, from an anthropological and psychological background of why people claim they don't have the money, is that your financial priorities are actually identity based. So what this means is people will spend in alignment with who they believe they are. So this could be something as simple as, if they believe they are a foodie, they have no problem spending $500 a month on restaurant eating. If they feel that they are a rocker, they have no problem spending $500 a month on gym or on concert going. If they identify as a Disney goer, they have no problem spending $500 a month on Disney. If they are struggling to identify as a fitness person, they're less likely to put their money where their mouth is, which is why so much of what we do in the Hive is working on the mindset of how do you want to show up, who do you want to be, and then that'll determine where your money should be. If they do not yet identify as a person who is committed to their bariatric journey and knows that that commitment means doing like priority work on their fitness and nutrition, they're probably not going to spend money to identify for that. Our clients who get the best results, surprise, surprise, are the ones who already identify that, yes, I am a gym goer and I want the best results. I am committed to fixing my nutrition and I want the best coach possible for that. I am someone who wants accountability and I want the best person who's going to stick their finger and say, this is what you need to do. If you think that's important and you identify as someone who wants to get things done, this absolutely is worth the $500 a month it is to work with me one-to-one. If you are someone who does not want results, though, you may say, I'm not willing to part for the money because I identify as someone who likes to go with the vibe, or I don't like being held accountable, or I'm okay with just kind of doing what I want. And again, there's nothing really wrong with that. It's just how you identity base. And I think that's where even clients or sometimes people in the community get upset with things of like, look, I get you say fitness is important, but it's not important enough to rearrange your time or your calendar around to fit 150 a month or 3 workouts a week. I totally get that. That just means it's not that big of a priority or not something you value more than the other things that are on the calendar. And again, that's fine. Which brings us to our third point. People will say that they do not have the time for a fitness program or for their bariatric journey. And it's really simple. It's why, like I always joke, like we have in the name Busy Bariatrics. And if you've known me, been around me, I will be the first to tell you busy is BS. What is a priority gets put on your calendar and you will hold space for it. It's the reason why people usually don't miss dentist or doctor's appointments is because there is a financial component for it and a scarcity component for it. Meaning, if you don't see your doctor for your appointment or your dentist, it can take like 6 months to reschedule those people. And I always see that like the dermatologist, I only have to see like once every 4 years. But by the time I realize I need to see a dermatologist, like, yo, you're not going to see this person for like 4 months. So because you're not going to see the person for 4 months, you're kind of like, okay, I don't really want to do this. So I'm going to just kind of avoid it. So the whole idea of being busy is usually BS. And most of the time, even when my clients come to me and say like, okay, I'm too busy to get all this done, or I can't get it done because I don't have enough time. The first thing we really coach in Busy Bariatrics is, what does your calendar look like and how do you accomplish it to get it done? And the more that we look at clients' calendars, we realize there are huge globs of free time that are just getting burned with doom scrolling on Instagram, getting everything else done, and prioritizing what you want. The final part is to realize like it's not really about Google Calendar. It's like your priorities. So if your car shut down, you would make it a priority to get it into the shop and get it fixed. If your car just kind of has like a weird clicking noise in the lock, but it works perfectly, you're probably not going to shut down or rearrange your day to get those things done. And again, it just comes down to like where does the priority come with and how it's important. The other part is like people take a reactive approach as opposed to a proactive approach in a lot of their lifestyle, meaning they are more willing to say like, oh my goodness, I'm not going to take care of my health until I have a major medical emergency. I'm the best example of this. I let my obesity and my sleep apnea go on, and it was not a priority to me until my doctor said, I'm going to die if I do not lose weight. And that's literally the conversation that it took for me to start to put it higher on the priority. And then when I would check in and say, well, am I doing better? They'd be like, well, you're still not doing this. So it's not high enough of a priority for you. And I kept jacking it up till I got to the level that I wanted. So with all that in mind, those are the main excuses we hear. And you need to understand there's some science and psychology that goes back to that. So like we said, people tend to temporarily discount, which means that humans undervalue those long-term benefits like we talked about and overvalue short-term convenience. It's the idea of like, look, I want to lose 20 pounds, but this weekend I'm going to a barbecue, and that's a lot more important is to just vibe in the moment. And that's where we kind of kick the can down. The other part is this idea that you have this all or nothing thinking when it goes to it, that like, if you want the results of bariatric surgery, you have to go hard in your first year, and that is the only thing you can prioritize. And we see that in the community. From being around 5 years, I can tell you when I see clients who are posting 3 times a day, constantly sharing podcasts, like that was me. And the more that it starts to slow down or they get into maintenance and they stop doing those things, it's not because they're a bad bariatric patient. It's other things come into their priority list, and that's more important. I've seen people after bariatric surgery find love or find different aspects, and that plays a bigger role. And again, there's nothing wrong with any of this. It's just that like there's more of an idea of since I'm not all in, I go all out or I go all elsewhere. Finally, it's when there is actually a calendar issue, I find a lot of the times it's not even that the time is the issue, is that there's no clear routine or structure into their calendar. And because there isn't a clear routine, there's no place to get it done. It's kind of just like you're filling in and getting everything done in the free time that you don't already have. So by putting in a simple routine, a lot of the times that helps. So I know I'm looking at the time. This is a long episode. I was told I should keep these under 40 minutes, and I'm getting to 38 minutes. So if you are still listening, I want you to really understand that if you ghosted, or if you said, I don't have the money or the time, or even in any aspect of your life, that doesn't make you a bad person. It just means your values are in different places. And I would take some time, if you're really feeling a certain way about this, is to see like, well, where did I put my value instead? Finally realize that like maybe getting clear on your calendar and your budget will allow you to show up better for yourself. But if that didn't hit, maybe that's an issue in and of itself of that this really isn't that important to you. And then I would ask yourself, why are you even listening to this podcast? If you're listening and you were on the fence or this episode hit some sort of nerve, I'm really happy to hear that. That means that you're still listening and there's a part of you that realizes you need to make changes in your life. So if you want to make a change or feel you need to make a change or just want to prove I listen to the end of these podcasts, DM me on Instagram at My Weight is History so we can talk about how we can get you out of this cycle of self-guilt, of ghosting, of not having the money for you to show up for yourself or the time in your calendar. Anyway, we're hitting up on a 40-minute mark, so I'm going to sign off on this. And as always, tell you, keep getting busy, because now you know the real secret. Getting busy isn't really the problem. Let's have a great day and keep getting busy.